point before, and I'm gonna have to reiterate it so that the slow Negroes in the back will understand. When they come in, they start calling me a Trump supporter because I'm not doing what I'm told. I'm not fit for slavery. Slavery is, kind of played out. The whole slave Negro thing is kind of done. Um, and is I don't believe that any intelligent black person should fight another intelligent black person because I believe my massa is better than your massa, or I believe my candidate is better than your candidate, or I believe that my Democrat is better than your Republican, or my Republican is better than your Democrat. I think that what Dr. Claude Anderson has made abundantly clear in his books, and he's explained this with facts and data and information, that the black community doesn't really benefit, at least when it comes to economics, whether a Democrat or a Republican is in office. The best that we tend to receive is some level of symbolism, some level of like, hey, y'all did it. Y'all got us in office. Thank you, black people. We'll see you in 4 years. That's kind of what I observe. That's been my experience. And I would love anyone to help me, prove me wrong on that. But that's kind of what I've observed, right? And so with that said, let me just jump into Dr. Anderson's book, and we're going to just start reading right now. And we're reading The Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson, and we're on page 171. And what he talks about here is John Brown and Sundown Town. So he's not actually talking about elections and stuff like that right now. Let me see here. I'm going to look to see if there's something here that maybe might apply to the election. That's my guy, Dr. Anderson. Let me just tell you. Okay, so I'm on question 57 on page 171, but I got to skip forward because I think we need to hear from the GOAT about politics. Because question 64 is this. Y'all tell me if this ain't nothing but God. Question 64 is, should blacks ally with liberals or conservatives? Should blacks ally with, should they form alliances with liberals, conservatives, neither, both, whatever, right? So let's jump to 64 because I think that that's a great guide as we sort of pursue how we want to deal with the elections coming up. Maybe it's something that we can all learn from. So here we go. He says, in truth, it makes little difference with which ideological group blacks identify because there is a scant difference between liberals and conservatives. Neither is willing to drastically alter the socioeconomic structure to benefit black Americans. Consequently, if blacks choose either side, they would still wind up in the same spot. At the bottom of a ranking order of acceptability, powerless and impoverished. Conservative racial tactics are open, direct, and demonstrate their determination to conserve white privileges, political advantages, and nearly 100% ownership of all wealth and resources. Conservatives do not intend to share the unearned prosperity that their ancestors gained by migrating to America, prosperity that came from black enslavement and Jim Crow segregation. Conservatives are well aware of the purpose of the racial norms established in the Diversity Acts of the 1700s, that whites would be the dominant and controlling population. Conservatives do not believe in sharing or surrendering power or resources. Conservatism comes from the root word to conserve, which means to hold on to what one has. When black Americans have never had more than 0.5% of anything of value in the richest nation on earth and suffer from a disproportionate share of social pathologies, what do black conservatives think that they are conserving? Food stamps, public housing, welfare, or criminalization? Conservatives will sink a black boat while liberals will attempt to comfort blacks as the boat sinks to the bottom. Do y'all understand that? Did y'all catch that? Let me know if you follow that. Do you see the difference here? Let's sit on that for a moment and let's process this. Let's process this. So conservatives will sink your boat, and the liberals will pat you up like a little baby as your boat is sinking to the bottom, make you think that everything's okay when really it's not. Does that not hit the nail on the head, or what? Is that not as accurate as anything you've ever heard in your life? Look, I don't hate my conservative friends or my liberal friends, but I don't understand what you're doing. I don't get it. Okay, you're conservative. You're, again, like Dr. Anderson says, what are you conserving? Like what is it about make America great again that you're thinking about? how does, what are you, what are we, I don't get it. And then my liberal friends, I'm like, you do know that most of these cities where black people are at the bottom economically and otherwise, you do know that many of these cities are run by Democrats. So what are you what are you really accomplishing here? Every time you show up and you do booties to the polls and vote or die campaigns, what is it exactly? Can you explain to me exactly what the black community gets from out of that deal? I know what the black boule gets. I know what the you know the Negroes on TV receive. You know, we know what the Rollins and the DLs and other people, we know what they get. But what do you get? What do black people get? Right? And I kind of think um I don't know. Um if you talk about the difference between Democrats and Republicans, it's really hard to see the difference, and I think that that's probably why I might offend some people by not taking any of that very seriously, because I don't see the evidence to show that all this voting that we've been doing has done anything good. Whereas imagine if we spent that same energy we spent voting and use that energy to build black owned schools. Well, what if we spent that same energy we spent voting building black wealth? What if we spent that same energy we spent voting investing in ourselves? What if we spent that same energy we spent voting learning how to build stable families? What if we spent that same energy we spent voting making our communities secure? I mean, again, I saw that there were 20,000 black men that got together and raised a whole bunch of money for Kamala Harris because they like to be hip and cool and connected to what's popular. And I get it. That's fine. Good for you. But I'm really kind of surprised that those same men can't get together and raise the same money for the people that actually care about you. Because it's proven politicians don't care. They're going to drop you off the bus as soon as they get to their destination. They're not going to. They made it clear. Even Kamala said, and it's not like I'm doing nothing specifically for black folks, but you specifically gave her $2 or $3 million that could have been used to fund a lot of really great black-owned schools. Do you know there's a school in Chicago? Let me just give you an example. There's a school in Chicago called Freedom Home Academy International. This school educates black children at the absolute highest levels imaginable. This school, I spoke at this school. They have 9-year-olds who are doing the work of college students. That's how good they are. They are that damn good. I forgot the brother's name that runs it, but I have a lot of respect for him. Um, they could have used that money. They could use them, but instead you threw it into the abyss. You threw it into this big political race, this $1 billion pot of money that's going to go toward putting somebody in the White House, and none of that is going to trickle back to the black community. So then you wonder where your wealth goes. You wonder why you have 1.6 trillion in income every year and it just dissipates and disappears in the wind. And Marcus Klein is his name, by the way. Thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate that. That helps me. Y'all know me, I'm not good with names, but I respect Marcus Klein immensely. So Marcus, if you see this, don't take that as a sign of disrespect at all. Um, I just think about these things, right? So let me keep going here. So he said, so Dr. Anderson says liberals espouse diversity and multiculturalism without understanding how those terms came about or how they are used against Black Americans. Inside of broad terms such as minority, diversity, and multicultural, Blacks are either downgraded or totally excluded. Even those leading the Black civil rights movement did not seem to understand that the political correctness of diversity caused liberals and the public in general to turn a blind eye on the unaddressed needs of Black Americans. In a society that no longer chooses to deal with race, diversity forces Blacks to compete with all of the fabricated minorities that liberals have added to the pot in a kumbaya effort to share the wealth with everybody. So again, because they have shared the wealth with everybody, you're not seeing the wealth. And that's the point I think Dr. Anderson is making very articulately, is that when you've been convinced to let all these other people into the house to share your resources, there ain't nothing left for you. And so let me keep reading here. Liberals impede Black socioeconomic progress by using euphemisms and equating Black suffering to discrimination experienced by other self-perceived and aggrieved groups. Once these groups are created, they are offered to both once these groups are created, they are offered to both the private and public sectors as a menu from which to select for affirmative action and other preferential treatment programs. Since the American ranking order of social acceptability puts Blacks in the lowest position, government agencies and private businesses will usually choose women and ethnic immigrants over Blacks. Pay attention. Everybody was running around talking about Kamala Harris saying she's the first black woman as president. Okay, maybe she is. It depends on how you want to evaluate her, the Jamaican side of her family. That's fine. I'm not here to debate you on that. But if Kamala was an African American, she would not be considered for the White House. If she was an African American, I want you to pay attention to how many high level black people there are. Even the Biden press secretary, John Pierre, whatever her name is, like Karen John Pierre or something. I don't think she's African American. Ketanji Brown Jackson is not African American. Barack Obama was not African American. So there is like this acceptable version of black that is different from African American black. They have a fear of intelligent African Americans who know their history. They have a fear of that. And the fear is the fact that they're thinking, oh my God, these people realize what we did to them. These people realize what we owe them. I'm literally dealing with the person who is related to somebody that my great great grandfather literally killed them and stole their land. They're coming back. We are the demons. We are the ghosts from Christmas past that are haunting them. We haunt them. It's almost like a rapist having to confront the victims of his crime. Like it's too much. It's too much. So you are to some extent seen as toxic when you show up and you're serious and you're honest about history and you're not shucking and jiving, you're not trying to pussyfoot around the issue. You're talking about what really happened and expecting fair compensation. I think that that's a problem for two reasons. One, because I think it just scares the hell out of people, and then number two, um, I think that there's something about serious black people that the world is not accustomed to. They're very much okay with African Americans who will entertain, who will tell jokes, who will play sports, who will make them laugh, who will rap and sing a song to them. But when you get black people that are serious and intelligent, they really show up saying, "Okay, where's my money? I expect my money." That's a type of equality that the world is not prepared for. When you show up and you say, "Look, I'm a human being. I'm not a cartoon character. I'm not a stereotype. I'm not your boy. I'm not your little man. I'm a human being who has a legitimate claim, and I expect my claim to be treated with the same dignity and respect that it would be if I was a white woman saying that somebody touched my booty in 1975." Right? White women that they can come and claim things that happened. You know, Bill Cosby kissed me and I did against my will in 1988. I deserve $10 million. I don't think black people get that same respect. And I think that respect is something that you have to command. It's not something that you can ask for. So it's really up to you to decide where you're going to draw the line. Because the idea that there is such a blatant, clear, and obvious claim on resources, the fact that it is so well documented, the fact that there are people living today who can tell you about things they went through, their parents went through, their grandparents went through, the fact that there are people who have a direct line where they can show you where land and property was taken from their families, where money and resources were taken from them, where somebody was a victim of a violent crime, and the fact that they just act like it never happened and say, "Hey, let's just pretend like it. Let's just move forward." Like, why are you talking about the past? That's very insulting. I mean, when you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, you can't help to be affected by the fact that he mentions that his father and all his uncles were murdered by white people. Like this, what other kind of man would emerge from that kind of trauma and terror at an early age? The original terrorist, absolutely, positively, for sure, was the white male. And what is really interesting to me is I don't understand those people who want to just automatically align with the terrorists and act like everything's okay. I don't understand that. And the terrorists weren't just Republicans. What's interesting is when they will take racism and they will define it along party lines. If you are a white Republican and you say something we don't like, oh, you're a racist, blah, 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 blah. But if you're a Democrat and you say the exact same thing, it's like, oh, well, Uncle Joe, he's changed. He's a different guy now. And I'm like, no, Uncle Joe, if you go back and you look at Biden's crime bill, he was going as hard as the Republicans. He was sitting right next to Strom Thurmond, who really had a real issue with black people. So what are you selling to me right now? What exactly are you so excited about right now? I don't get it. I don't understand it. So anyway, let me keep reading. Let me get back to it. Okay, so Dr. Anderson, this is page 185 of the Black History Reader. You can get a copy of Dr. Anderson's books at powernomics.com. So feel free to go there. So he says here, These different groups are created besides black, they are offered to both private and public sectors as a menu from which to select affirmative action and other preferential treatment programs. Since the American ranking order of social acceptability puts blacks in the lowest position, government agencies and private businesses will usually choose women and ethnic immigrants over blacks. When the menu of preferred groups and the national policy of benign neglect were first introduced in the mid 1970s to take the focus off of blacks. Both conservatives and liberals were amazed that black leadership did not push back or take to the streets in protest. The federal government issued a registry that reclassified Hispanics and women as minorities and added American Indians, Eskimos, Asians, Arabs, Pacific Islanders, Sephardic Jews, and poor whites as minorities eligible to compete with blacks in affirmative action programs. None of these groups needed the Emancipation Proclamation or the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution in order to be accepted into mainstream society. If they had needed them, they would have pursued them. Liberals and conservatives worked as a team in a manner that inflicted pain on black Americans and compounded the injustices they had endured. By the late 1970s, liberals gave up their focus on blacks, deciding that aligning with blacks was probably a losing cause, but that the newly fabricated minority classes could cloak themselves in the historical negative treatment endured by blacks and pretend that they, not black Americans, were the victims of racism. There is no constitutional, legal, or moral basis to equate the experiences of these new minorities to the unique oppression of blacks or to queue them up in the same benefits line. Both liberals and conservatives show their indifference to black Americans by accepting diversity and political correctness concepts that displace blacks. History shows that neither conservatives nor liberals can be depended upon to protect the rights of blacks or to take action to see that blacks are placed in a protected class based upon their exceptionality and unique historical oppression. Blacks must not only do their own political thinking, but also place their own group self-interest first and foremost. In other words, you must do something specifically for black people. You must do something specifically for black people because black people were specifically targeted for specific crimes over a specific period of time. So stop telling me that you can't be specific. Stop that. Blackness cannot be watered down. Stop telling me that gay man went through the same thing I went through. I don't hate him. I ain't got nothing against him. I don't care who you sleep with when you go to bed at night, but that ain't the same as being black. What happened to you was very specific. And until somebody has the balls, and maybe a woman will have the balls because some of these men ain't got no balls. When somebody has the balls to say specific things, then that's when I'm going to start listening. But because until you can talk specifically about my situation, I'm going to ignore you and call you a clown. I'm going to have no interest in anything that you have to say because you can't even specifically deal with a specific issue. Racism and structural systematic inequality that was built into this country is a specific cancer. It is a specific insidious cancer that requires specific surgery. And y'all trying to give me an aspirin. You're literally giving an aspirin to a cancer patient. You need a surgeon. You need people that are going to specifically address the problems that exist in the community. So my heroes in the community, my leaders that I respect, are not these buffoons on TV, not these people jockeying for position in the Democrat or Republican parties. My heroes are the people that get up every day and say, I'm specifically doing this specifically to benefit the black community, and I'm going to have specific measurements to show the progress of what I've done. I specifically built a school for black children because they're being screwed in the educational system. Thank you to the Marcus Klein and all the others who are doing that, and Asada Moore and people like that. I'm specifically raising a black family to make sure my boys are safe and my girls get raised in a proper way and that I can love a black woman. I'm specifically building generational wealth because over many generations, my wealth was stolen from me. So I want to specifically build that wealth and specifically keep it in the black community so I can specifically make sure that we're specifically good. When you make everything general, when you try to be everything to everybody, you become nothing to no one. When you try to do everything for everyone, you get nothing done. And that would explain to you, ladies and gentlemen, why y'all been voting in every damn election, voting with vigor, like voting with more enthusiasm than anybody else. And you can't show me any area where you've made significant progress. You just can't. You can't. You can't, because you're the cancer patient who hurries up and takes his aspirin. And you think that taking the aspirin every day is going to make you better, and it ain't going to make you better. Praying and taking aspirin is not going to heal your cancer. You need surgery. You need specific surgery. You need somebody to really dig in and look and specifically figure out exactly what's going on so they can specifically fix that issue. So until you get specific, you're going to be wasting your time. You're absolutely wasting your time. Page 186. Dr. Claude Anderson answers this. This is page 186 of the book, The Black History Reader. You can get copies of Dr. Anderson's books at powernomics.com. Question 65 says this. It says, is Black exceptionalism the unused key to Black self-empowerment? Let's see what he says here. He says, Blackness has had special importance and impact in America and the world. For centuries, the American public and politicians in particular have proclaimed that America's democratic values, freedoms, and immigration policies make it an exceptional nation among societies and is therefore due special recognition, respect, and elevated status over all other nations. Exceptional means something that is different, unique, rare, unusual, and remarkable. In the case of a group, it means the members have been treated in an uncommon manner from all others. What group of people in America, in nearly every respect, have been viewed and treated in a more egregious manner than Black Americans? Black Americans are an exceptional people in this nation in many ways. It is time for Black Americans to demand compensation, recognition, appreciation, and respect for what their exceptionality created in America. Because of Black exceptionality, it is an affront and disrespectful for this nation and the Black overclass to continue relegating Black Americans to broad and ambiguous groupings such as minorities, people of color, poor people, diversity, disadvantaged, and multicultural. Inclusion into these categories not only denies Blacks recognition for their achievements, it gives the misleading impression that all categories of class minorities, immigrants, Native Indians, Native Indians, gays, transsexuals, and women were enslaved, denied free land and wealth, lynched, castrated, denied to benefit from their own labor, denied human rights and love, and were maltreated as Black Americans. They were not. None of these groups have been treated like Black people. Black people are a very special people. Black exceptionalism is the missing factor needed to ignite a movement to change the bottom rung status of Blacks. A fundamental premise of my Powernomics concepts urges Blacks to build group self-sufficiency and competitiveness upon its advantages and exceptionalities. Powernomics principles are the best hope that Black Americans have to survive and prosper in America. However, the window of opportunity is very small and closing quickly. In my book, Powernomics, the National Plan to Empower Black America, I correctly projected that when compared to other population classes, Blacks would be a permanent underclass by 2013, which has occurred. Underclass status is measured by a group standing on social discomfort indicators, such as, pay attention now, write this down. This is the list of quality of life factors Dr. Anderson lays out. He says, let's see here. Underclass status is measured by groups standing on social discomfort indicators such as measures of health. Are Black people at the bottom in terms of health? Mental and physical health. What do you think? Give me a yes if you agree. Employment. Do we have the highest unemployment rate? Poverty. In all those cities run by Democrats, are we still at the bottom rung when it comes to poverty? Income. How you doing on the income factor? You caught up with white people yet? Anybody? You caught up with Latino people? Anybody? Wealth. Well, we know about wealth. I showed y'all the chart a couple of days ago. Education. How those kids doing in school? Are we producing a bunch of kids that could be Rhodes Scholars if they wanted to? Are they just fully prepared to take on the world? Are they highly educated at the highest levels? What y'all think? Marcus Klein, tell me what's going on in Chicago public schools. Criminalization, meaning numbers of people going to prison, and business ownership. These data show Blacks are fixed at the bottom of every negative indicator and bear a disproportionate share of social pathologies. Underclass status is evident when, in public discourse or policy, Blacks are ignored, no longer mentioned or acknowledged by name, except for when the elections happen, as a group. Black Americans must use their exceptionalism to change direction. They have devoted nearly 500 years to running away from Blackness as a negative, but they must now turn to their exceptionality, view it as a positive, and proclaim it based upon the exceptional treatment and history they have experienced in American society. To use group exceptionalism as a positive force, it is necessary to know what makes them exceptional and distinguished from other groups in society. This is what makes you different. This is why you are specific. You deserve specific policies. The following is a partial list of ways blacks are exceptional in the U.S. Black people were the first people on earth and ancestors of all mankind. 2. The first people in North America, the Folsom people and the Moors. 3. The only people enslaved by the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Supreme Court, and state Jim Crow laws. 4. The only people classified as property, 3/5 of a human and a peculiar species. 5. Only people made a permanent minority and underclass by the 1790 nationalization laws. 6. The only people excluded from the billions of acres of free land granted to white immigrants. 7. The only people not paid for their labor, therefore they cannot acquire assets to pass to their children. 8. Free labor that, along with free Indian land, became the definition of the American dream sought by immigrants. 9. The only people for whom it was illegal to attend school or learn how to read and write. 10. Descendants of slaves and were in America before 99% of all other people arrived. 11. The most patriotic people and fought in every major war since the nation's founding. 12. Creators of dance, music, and slang copied and confiscated by every nation. 13. Pawns over which the North and South fought in the 1860s American Civil War, brother against brother. 14. The only people who created the need for a second U.S. Constitution, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, and Civil Rights laws. 15. Southern labor class whose images were displayed on Confederate currency. 16. The only people in America who were denied the humanity of loving, nurturing, building, and protecting their own families. Reflections upon the exceptionalities listed above should lead readers to question how different the U.S. would look today if 1. Blacks had been paid for forced labor that cleared the land, built the roads, bridges, canals, government offices, and universities. If 2. Blacks had been members of the founding fathers, participating in writing the nation's constitution, allowed to vote, hold public offices, and express group self-interest. 3. If blacks had ownership of some of the thousands of acres of free land upon which to build mega farms and ranches and extract the minerals, oil, gas, lumber, and other resources, and the opportunity to accumulate wealth from the generous land giveaways. 4. If blacks have been allowed to economically benefit from their inventions, music, dance, culture, and communities. 5. If blacks had received the land, money, and tribal membership mandated in the 1866 Indian treaties. If 6. Black ownership rights have been preserved to land in Florida according to the Adams-Onis Treaty. 7. If blacks have received the $50 million stolen by whites from the Freedmen's Bank. The exceptionality of black Americans is their best but so far unused pathway to socioeconomic competitiveness, independence, and self-sufficiency. I'm going to stop on that point, and we're going to take a breath. And I want us to kind of process this for a minute. I want us to meditate on what Dr. Anderson said. Here's what I'm getting from this. It seems that what Dr. Anderson is saying is that you live in a country that wants to lump you in with everybody else. They want to act like what you went through and what you lost was not that important. That all that matters is how we move forward from here, and the past is just the past, which means the past doesn't matter anymore. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. That is simply not true. The present is nothing more than an accumulation of actions that have been taken during the past. That's all the present is. Everything that you see around you, when you walk through a city like Seattle and you see $1 billion, $100 million, $200 million, $1 billion buildings all throughout that city, and you realize that not one of those buildings is owned by a black person, there's a reason for that. Why is it that so many of these institutions are not owned by black people, but were built by black people? So a debt is owed, and it's owed because you are unique and exceptional. There's no other group of people in this country that can say they went through what we went through, that they had the same experience, they had the same theft that occurred for our families. And so the question becomes, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about that? Because that's a lot. That's a big debt. If somebody owes you $3,000 and they only got $3,500 in the bank, they're not going to give you that money because they owe it to you. They're not going to give that money to you if they don't have to. If you just say, "Oh, well, we can still be friends, we're still cool," then guess what? They might send you $50 or something. They're not going to give you that 3,000 if they've only got 3,500 in the bank. So you're dealing with a country that is in an enormous amount of debt, and they tend to only pay for things that they have to pay for. They send money over to Israel because the Israelis have a very powerful lobby. They have AIPAC, and they force them to pay that money. They make them do that. They know that if they don't write those big $100 billion, $50 billion checks, that they're not going to get reelected. So you have to force their hand. Can you force it? When we got the Obama administration, Russell Simmons and I pushed the Obama administration to do something on incarceration back 9 years ago. We had to make them do it. They didn't want to do it, and it was crazy because it was something they promised they would do. They just were like, well, we don't have to keep promises to black people because nobody's making us do it. When FDR was talking to black people about civil rights and everything else, he said, okay, great, go out there and make me do it. So I really, instead of making this all about how evil white people can be, because we know we got evil white people out there, but I don't hate all white people. I don't hate, this is not a hatred conversation. Instead of us sitting around and doing the typical Negro tradition of complaining about how white folks none did us wrong, after we finish that conversation, I need us to talk about how we're doing ourselves wrong. Before you talk about how they're selling you short, you got to talk about how you're selling yourself short. So what are you commanding? What are you demanding? Or are you just so eager to go out and just support your favorite politician and literally expect nothing in return? That's awkward. That's very weird. That's very unhealthy. That's a mental illness. I don't care who you vote for, whether you vote for Trump, Harris, or something in between, or you vote for nobody. I just ask you to consider the logical action of quid pro quo. Logically saying, okay, now that I'm supporting you, here's what I need you to give me, or I won't support you anymore. If you cannot say that, then you will never be respected. You will always be taken advantage of. They're always going to use you because all pimps love to use a sucker. Any pimp loves to use a sucker. Politicians are pimps. They will use you up if you don't ask for anything because they got somebody right behind you who is demanding what they want. Israel they demand what they want. The gay community, they're demanding what they want. When the immigrants start voting, they've got leadership that's going to demand what they want. So what are you going to do? That's it. That's all. That's my whole point today. I'm not gonna keep going on forever. I gotta go and do some other stuff. I think I've done enough yelling and screaming today. I've given us enough to think about. If you want to go take a look at Dr. Anderson's book, you can go to powernomics.com. That's where you can find his books. It's called The Black History Reader. Powernomics is there as well. I keep these books very handy. I encourage you. First of all, we should support this man. This man, all that money, all these brothers raising these people that raised $2 million to help Harris get elected when she said she would do nothing specifically for black people. I would love for those same men to get together and raise, a couple $1 million for Dr. Anderson, the Powernomics Corporation, who has spent 50 years doing things specifically for black people. How is it that you will give your best to people who give you their worst and give your worst to people who give you their best? This man has done work that no one else is willing to do. And I find that really fascinating that you put him at the bottom of the pile and you put people who hate you and don't respect you at the top of the pile. That speaks to a self-esteem issue. That's a mental health issue. That's no different from the guy who treats one woman really well and she's the one who doesn't even like you. But you got a girl who's really down for you, who's had your back, who's loved you through thick and thin, helped you when you were sick, and you ignore her. That doesn't make any sense. That's not logical. So at the end of the day, I think loving ourselves means that we're going to love the people and support the people the most who truly advocate for us. And there's nothing wrong with me saying that. If you think that I'm radical for saying that, or you think that I'm dangerous or I'm a bad person for saying that, then all I can say is I hope you go see a therapist that'll help you understand that what you're doing is not working. You're losing. You're not winning. Even if you win the election, your team wins, you're still not really winning. You're still not winning. So what are you going to do about that? That's my 2 cents. That's all I got to say. Thank you for listening, everybody. Tomorrow morning, we're doing financial consciousness training. We do that 7 days a week, every single morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. It's totally free. If you'd like to join and get an invitation, text the word morning, MORNING, to 87948. It's called Money in the Morning Economic Elevation Training. We do this every day. We're training economic soldiers for the future. That's what we're doing. I'm building an army, and the army is powerful. I would take one intelligent black person, one B1 person over a hundred shifty Negroes in a minute. And so you are, by giving your children access and your family access to cutting edge economic thinking, you're literally creating a whole nation of super soldiers. That's what we're doing. You are the Navy SEALs of economics in the black community. And I don't want you to underestimate the power of the ideas that you're being exposed to. You can go look up my whole background. My PhD in finance is very, very real. Very few African American men on the entire planet have that degree. It's very, very hard to acquire. It's like being a financial ninja or something. So anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. I hope you guys have a great day. And again, if you want to get a copy of my book is called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. You can go to drboycebooks.com. That's drboycebooks.com. Feel free to grab a copy. My wife's stuff is over there as well. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.